Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 322. I'm your host, Paul Reichoff. We are only 1 month into the Trump presidency, and March is not even here yet. But the madness surely is. And now, more than any other time in our lifetime, is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. The long-anticipated Pentagon Purge is here. It started on another Friday night announcement, a Friday night massacre in which the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Honorable C.Q. Brown, was fired. And the senior JAG officers, the lawyers atop the Pentagon and our entire military establishment. It was long anticipated, but nevertheless shameful, devastating, and compromising to our national security. Now, I've met C.Q. Brown. He is an honorable and noble public servant who will always defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. So of course he's out. He's loyal to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump. So he has to be purged. Now, this is likely just the first and most significant and most powerful firing of what is likely many more to come at the Pentagon and across the federal government. And C.Q. Brown, always honorable, always showing true character and allegiance to the Constitution and to what's right, always projecting a positive image of an American leader. Our 21st chairman of the Joint Chiefs posted this message on LinkedIn. A farewell message to the Joint Force. I was inspired to serve by my father, who told me 4 years in the military will not hurt you. 4 years turned into 4 decades, surrounded by the finest service members and civilians from across our nation. Every day, you have inspired me. It's been my distinct honor to conclude my career as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. As chairman, I focused on warfighting, modernization, and trust. The Joint Force's commitment to our security has never been more critical. I'm confident you will continue to stand resolute in defense of our nation. Shireen and I wish you and your families all the best. Thanks for your leadership, CQ. Even in the end, he didn't talk about himself or his own leadership. He talked about the leadership of the force, all the way down to the lowest private in basic training right now. That's the kind of leader that CQ Brown is. And that's why Trump fired him. He's a true patriot. He's an honorable leader. He's a voice of clarity and an inspiration and a role model. And he's a man who deserved better than this. And we are a country that deserves better than this. But he's a leader who can't be done now. It's time for a new chapter, not just for America, but also for C.Q. Brown and for anyone else of stature and influence and integrity who is purged now or will soon be purged by the Trump administration. America needs C.Q. Brown's candid voice now, after his firing, more than ever. And I really hope he doesn't do what so many other retired generals do. Go to ground, retire, go work for a defense contractor. I hope he's talking to 60 Minutes this weekend. I hope he's out in the media speaking the truth about what he thinks and what he feels and what he fears about what could be to come. Now is not the time for our most important patriots to be silent. Now, of course, I extend an invitation to General Brown to join us here on Independent Americans. We'll see if that happens. And of course, Trump is replacing this trailblazing black leader with another white guy. A white guy who hasn't really been on anyone's radar and seems to be known for his loyalty to Trump, or at least that's what Trump says. So in comes Lieutenant General Dan Raising Cain. And it was right on cue. It happened on a late Friday night in what some in the press are now calling the Friday night Pentagon massacre. But here's what I'll tell you, especially because of the announcements at the Pentagon, we are never going to have a quiet Friday night again. or at least for the next 4 years. So if you thought you were just going to watch the new episode of Severance, or you were going to get to watch a basketball game, or just sit on your back porch and look at the stars and hope that something Elon created doesn't fall on your head, you're not going to get a quiet Friday night, because every Friday night they are going to announce some new, disturbing, unprecedented, dangerous shit. So this was the latest weekly, late Friday, disruptive, distractive, overly political, controversial, militarily unnecessary move by Trump and Hegseth as their national culture war continues to drive the tip of its spear into the Pentagon. And as the Pentagon becomes the tip of the spear for everything else they want to do. As I've long warned, everything they want to do in America, they're going to do at the Pentagon first. And they're doing it fast. And this is just the start. Our friend Dan Lamothe at the Washington Post, the excellent Pentagon reporter, and others also reported that the Pentagon has purged in the latest round of firing 5,200 Pentagon employees. And if you don't think a late Friday night decapitation of our leadership and a purge of 5,000 people has our enemies celebrating, then you're probably having coffee with Putin, like Trump and others. And everyone needs to call it what it is. It's not a firing. It's not a layoff. It is a purge. It is a purge of non-loyalists. It's not a firing or a restructuring. It's a purge. And CQ Brown has long been at the top of that purge list. Anyone who watches Fox News knows that. But call it what it is. It's like in the days after January 6th when people called it a riot or a gathering or a mob, instead of what it was, a violent insurrection. Now remember, they also fired the top judicial officers for the Army, Navy, and Air Force, took out all the top lawyers who might tell them they can't do something because it's unlawful. So be alarmed and be involved. This is not normal. This is not acceptable. It's radical politics, and it's a quest for power over politics and what's best for our national security. It endangers our troops. It endangers our homeland security, and it most definitely has our enemies celebrating. But maybe there's a bit of a silver lining or a miscalculation. What if the purge becomes the opposition? What if the purge becomes the core of the resistance? The purged could be the patriotic, who will serve as the guardrails, as the guardians, as the protectors of our democracy while it remains under attack. Maybe Trump fucked up, because in his purge, he's removing some of the most patriotic, honorable, experienced public servants we have in America. What Trump has done now to our military is kind of like what Paul Bremer decided to do to the Iraqi military in Iraq after the fall of Saddam. He took the most experienced and the most seasoned and the most senior members of their military, folks who know all about politics and organizing and uprisings, and put them out in the street with their guns. And in doing so, they created the core of a hardened insurgency that would continue to fight back against America until we eventually left. As Trump continues to purge the government of patriotic public servants, those public servants could organize independent of our government, outside of our government, in defense of our people, against tyranny from our government, and from our president, who now considers himself a self-appointed king. The purged could be the 2025 Minutemen and Minutewomen who resist a tyrant, oppose a king, and fight for a free people and the future that they deserve. So, watch this space and stay vigilant. Because in the meantime, Putin's best month ever just keeps getting better, especially thanks to people like our old friend, Senator Redneck, Alabama Republican Tommy Tuberville, who had this to say this week about the shakeup at the Pentagon. Tuberville was quoted as saying he's against cuts at the Pentagon, including downsizing its staff, and said, "I wouldn't be against them taking it from a Pentagon to a Trigon. Cut a couple sides off of it." Senator Redneck, you'd be funny if you weren't so ridiculous and dangerous. A Trigon. A Trigon. Otherwise known as a triangle, maybe? But this is vintage Tuberville. He remains the most reckless and dumbest member of the entire U.S. Senate, the hackiest member of the entire U.S. Senate. And he's a guy who has our enemies celebrating for sure. Now, I'm going to get into all of this coming up with our returning guest, a returning champion, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, the rogue Republican who's been outspoken for the last few years, who's been a patriot in defense of our democracy, who's gone against his party, who's gone against Trump, and who's tried to lead a movement of opposition to all of what's happening in this country. He's been on the show before. I'm going to talk to him about his tattoos, about being a new dad, but we're also going to find out who he thinks is a leader who can meet this moment, who's got a strategy. We're going to, of course, talk about Ukraine, and he's even going to show us his tattoo. So stay tuned for that. And if you're not watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and check us out there now. You're going to want to see this. So as we surge into March like a lion and get ready for the madness, it's time for my top topics. In lots of ways that would make Tommy Tuberville proud, there are lots of other things that are happening at the Pentagon that are also reckless, dangerous, and extreme. Now, coming on the backs of attacking DEI, banning trans people, attacking the press, Secretary Hegseth has continued to narrow their recruiting efforts. This week, cutting outreach at girls' schools. That's after dropping recruiting events at a black engineering event just last week. The Army has severed a long-standing partnership with Ashley Hall, an all-girls preparatory school in Charleston, South Carolina. For the first time since 2017, the Army Corps of Engineers will not participate in Ashley Hall's annual Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day, because the Army apparently isn't interested in recruiting any more women engineers to work in the military. They're also not interested in having any press coverage. The Trump administration has decided to close Pentagon briefing rooms for journalists when no briefing is underway. It takes away their workspace and their Wi-Fi for people like, again, our friend Dan Lamothe at the Washington Post. He's making their jobs harder. He's removing their resources. He's removing their access as he continues to consolidate and deepen a propaganda machine at the Pentagon. Friendlies like Breitbart and OWN and Newsmax are given perks and privileges. Challengers, i.e. legit journalists, are getting challenges and blocks. So the Washington Post isn't traveling with the Secretary of Defense anymore, but Laura Ingraham from Fox News is. So this allows them to control the message. This allows them to redefine truth. This allows them to perpetuate a propaganda machine that goes unchallenged. And it allows them, using, of course, X, to push out their own messages without any challenges whatsoever. Check out this link as an example. As Haley Britsky at CNN noted, no TV pool was bought on this trip. So video like this is the only video that was available of the Secretary of Defense's trip. You can just listen to the music in this video, watch this video. And remember, everything they're doing at the Department of Defense is a model for what they want to do at other agencies and across the rest of our society. From propagandizing comms, to culture war battles, to leadership purges, to DOGE shenanigans, to privatizing, to the overall tone of disrespect. Hegseth and the Department of Defense were first. He was the first nominee to go through and bust through the hole. And they'll be the tip of the spear for everything that Trump wants to do across our society. So stay vigilant. And the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is going to be right behind it. More on that in a second. But first, also this week, a top topic. Radical, extreme, unqualified candidate Kash Patel was confirmed to be the next director of the FBI. Yes, really. And if you didn't hear my episode a few weeks ago with Asha Rangappa, go back and check it out. She worked at the FBI, she teaches national security law at Yale, and she explains how Kash Patel didn't take a polygraph like most other FBI agents did, and didn't even go through a thorough background check like most other FBI agents would have had to. And that's why you should be alarmed, you should be concerned, and you should stay focused in the midst of all this other stuff on what's happening at the FBI. It was a 51-49 vote. One vote difference, and Kash Patel is confirmed to run the FBI. And now he can select Dan Bongino, another radical from the world of talk radio, to be his deputy, a guy who's never worked at the FBI, and I can't even begin to capture all the crazy shit this guy has said. But the confirmation of Kash Patel is another dark, disgusting, dangerous moment in our demented modern American history. He'd be disqualified for serving as an FBI agent. He definitely shouldn't be the director. Shame on all 51 of you who sold out our nation's integrity and security to vote yes. The brave men and women of the FBI deserve so much better than this, as do all Americans. And yet again, with the FBI compromised and disabled and dismantled, our enemies are celebrating. These are increasingly perilous times, more and more so by the day, but we can never give up. We can never give up. And coming up, Adam Kinzinger is going to give you some specific recommendations on how you can stay involved and will motivate you with a little bit more energy and a little bit more reason to never give up. But Kash Patel and Dan Bongino at the FBI show one thing, that Trump is swinging for the fences over and over again because it's working and he's winning. And there's no sign that the Democrats have any ability to slow him down. You got to keep track of the stuff that's high profile, the top topics. But I'm also going to help you focus on things that are below your radar. And once again, that includes the Department of Veterans Affairs. Firings continue at the Department of Veterans Affairs, where 1,400 new employees were fired last Friday. That's on top of 1,000 the week before, and somewhere around 3,000 already just in the last month. The flamethrower of cuts is tearing deeper and deeper into the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, I've warned that the VA is a massive target for Elon Musk and DOGE. Well, it looks like now they're locked in on that target. And this is definitely just the start. Expect the cuts to continue, alongside a parallel of dramatically increased privatization. It's actually what Pete Hegseth and his former group Concerned Veterans of America and others on the far right have been advocating for decades. And their ideological plans and dreams are now, unfortunately, becoming a reality. We are about to see the biggest expansion of what I call the veterans industrial complex in history. And it's only a matter of time before they start replacing VA vans with Cybertrucks. Below your radar, but also a reason to remind you while the Democrats will not save you, I've got something specifically about the Department of Veterans Affairs. As I've told you, half the Democrats in the Senate voted to confirm radical, unqualified Doug Collins to be the VA secretary. And now, some of them want their votes back. Yes, check this out. Senator Dick Blumenthal from Connecticut says after the recent probationary employee dismissals at the VA, he regrets voting to back Doug Collins for confirmation as VA secretary. Blumenthal said, quote, "He has betrayed the promises that he made to me during his confirmation hearing." You think? No shit. Blumenthal, you and half the Democrats voted for this guy to be VA secretary. Now you want your vote back? There are no takebacks. You can't claim ignorance now. I tried to warn you. Plenty of people tried to warn you. And now, because of your shameful weakness, veterans are going to be the ones who pay the price. Check this out. You think that Hegseth's Uncle Suckers line was dumb? Well, wait till you check out this one from Doug Collins about Whoppers.
I've been gone from DC for a little bit, but I just found out undoubtedly Burger King has opened a franchise in the Senate side of the House and on Capitol Hill. I don't know what's happened, but Whoppers are flying out the door everywhere. Let me tell you what I've heard. Whopper number one going out the door. VA healthcare is going to suffer. That can be anything further from the truth. In fact, what we've done is actually strengthen VA healthcare and VA benefits by actually putting a cap on that we've protected positions so that veterans are not going to have any diminishment in their health or their benefits.
Man, if only the press cared that much about VA, he would be exposed for his glaring hackery. But in the meantime, I and others like our friend Leo Shane at Military Times will continue to try to stay focused on what's happening at the VA, even if it's below your radar. And remember, roughly 30% of all federal workers are veterans. So every time there's a firing, roughly 1 in 3 of them are folks, men and women, who've served our country that are now being fired, being purged by Elon Musk, DOGE, and Trump. And this is no doubt just the start.
Right now, I've just been told we are just the first step of almost 2 billion, that's billion with a B, that we found in contracts that are cutting. Those are things that we're saving now that we can put back into healthcare, benefits, making sure that we're doing what the VA is supposed to do, and that is health and veterans benefits. Stands to reason. But hey, you got to see this. I've been given this report. It says we were taking millions of contracts in dollars in contracts to create things like PowerPoint slide and meeting minutes. Folks, if you don't know how to run PowerPoint slides, learn. It's a tutorial on your computer. Go learn for free. It's okay. Take your own notes. Wow, I'll send you one of my pencils if you need one, but we're not paying millions of dollars for consultants to do this for us.
I'll send you my pencils if you need one. That's the administration's spin again, and it's becoming a mirror image of what Hegseth does at Department of Defense, but with a Southern accent and lines like this. Years ago, I told you not to trust General Eric Shinseki when he was the VA secretary. I told you not to trust Robert Wilkie when he was the VA secretary. I've said the same for VA secretaries from Democrat and Republican administrations. And you shouldn't trust Collins either. And consider one thing. If this is how they treat the military, and this is how they treat veterans, how do you think they're going to treat everybody else? How do you think they're going to treat you? They might treat you like Elon Musk treats astronauts who are up there with veterans and troops as some of the most honorable, respected people in all our country. And of course, Elon Musk is taking shots at them, calling them, among other things, quote, fully retarded. This is a word he's actually using, a guy who stood up at a cabinet meeting today. This is the guy that our kids see on television and on X, using a word like retarded. If my kid called somebody retarded in school, he'd be kicked out. Elon Musk wants to be in the cabinet and run our country. It's time to bring back our award for Asshole of the Week. I think this guy's going to get it almost every week the way 2025 is going. Because after cutting troops and cutting veterans and cutting the 9/11 health program, he's now attacking astronauts, including the Kelly brothers, who are not taking this sitting down. Senator Mark Kelly in Arizona has been pushing back, and so is his brother, Scott Kelly, who tweeted this. I was commander of the ISS when Andy flew his first space mission. He was one of the most competent, trustworthy, and honest people I've ever met. This rhetoric is beyond the pale, but sadly, not surprising. He does not deserve this kind of disrespect. Scott Kelly is an honorable and courageous American hero, contrasting him with a sellout who's done nothing but mooch, betray, and profit off the American people. It's integrity versus corruption. It's real tough versus fake tough. It's patriotism versus grift. One guy, well actually two guys, twins, went to space and served their country. The other guy plays with chainsaws and disrespects everybody from American astronauts to the mothers of his own children. So, I don't know about you, but I'm with the Kelly brothers. Because they are true American patriots, true tough guys, two leaders who are stepping up, just like our guest in this episode. He's a former Illinois congressman who's also a combat pilot. He served in our military, he served in Congress, and he continues to serve now as a powerful voice, a conscience for the American people on everything from national security to January 6th to Ukraine. He's been on our show 3 times before, and he is back to talk about all this and much more. He's our friend, Adam Kinzinger. So, welcome to the madness. Welcome to a conversation with a leader who can help us pierce through it and give you reason to be hopeful, or at least reason to be motivated to keep on fighting. Welcome to a conversation with a true patriot about patriotism and how we can all be more patriotic. Welcome to Independent Americans, episode 322. Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, especially around the world. It is nonstop, and we are going to continue to bring you really important voices. The last couple have been great with Wes Moore and Bob Kerrey, and we've got more coming up, and we've got another really important, impactful leader that sits at the intersection of politics, national security, veterans affairs, culture, tattoos, and more for his 4th returning visit. The returning champion, the great and powerful Adam Kinzinger. Congressman Adam Kinzinger is back. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, buddy, good to be with you. It's been a while, and nothing's really happened since then. So hopefully, we can find some things to talk about.
It's been a while. You haven't
Yeah.
been out with me in a while, but we continue to be out there, kind of crossing in midair. And I got to start by thanking you for your leadership and your courage and your candor. Um, but we
Look,
both,
man, this is just what people should be doing, right? Like, thanks for saying thanks, but like, man, what blows me away daily is just that more people don't. It's just like, I mean, why the hell else would you do this job? You know what I mean?
well, more Republicans in particular, and I want to get to that because we haven't talked about that in a while. But before I do, I want to talk about everything from Hegseth to Ukraine to your tattoos. But before I do, let me ask you, man, you're in the middle of all this, and you've been pretty open about the fact that you're in the crosshairs of a lot of hate and vitriol, and you've got a family and a young one. How are you, and where are you? Don't tell me exactly where you are. I mean, I'm going to put undisclosed location under everybody from now. But where
Look,
are you and how are you, man?
I live in Texas now, and which is interesting. Kind of accidentally happened, but I like it here. I don't know how long we'll stay here, but we're here for now. But look, how am I? I guess fine. I mean, family's great, life is good, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if you're somebody like you and I, and probably most people listening or watching, you actually care about the country. It's a good thing, and it's a curse in a way. And right now, it's the curse because every day you wake up, there's something new that happened, and it makes your blood boil, and it makes you more motivated. And there's a point at which you do ask yourself, like, how many more tours in Vietnam do I have to do? But I'll tell you this much: I've got at least one more tour in me because what I'm seeing happen to this country is it's wrong, and so we're gonna fight. But I'm doing all right generally, and I always say to anybody that wants to talk about throwing me in Gitmo or whatever, like, you're gonna have to make up charges. Bring it. That'll make me 3 times more effective against you. I welcome it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, it would be a big party in Gitmo, and there'd be a lot of us. But the conversation would be good, and it would be a really powerful group of people who have been. The comparison about battle tours is really good because I think especially for you when you're running for Congress, you've got kind of every year feels like a combat rotation. I used to say when I ran IAVA, it was like 15-year deployment. It was just you're
Mhm.
in a cycle and it never stops. But you're also living in that world where your mind is kind of split. Like I'm at a basketball game last night with my kids, and the White House is shutting down the press. So yet your mind has to almost like in combat, you kind of have to compartmentalize a little bit. But you also, and a part of what I think you're really important is because you get the culture in a way that a lot of Democrats don't. And you and I have both been critical of the Democrats and the Republicans. But I think in this moment, people are looking for leaders who talk straight, who seem real. We had Wes Moore on last week. I think he's one of the rare Democrats that can do that. We had Bob Kerrey on, who was like known for doing that his whole career. But you're a guy who does that too. So before we went live, you said, "Hey, can we talk about my tattoo?" Because there's another guy. There's
I
another
just
guy with some.
mentioned I had a tattoo.
Well, there's another guy with some tattoos that's now running the Pentagon that you and I know pretty well, probably better than most. And I want to talk about him. But part of him is the image, right? The image, and that's a lot of this: the image of him, the image of Tulsi, the image of Kristi Noem. But you're a guy who's got a down to earth image. Can you show us the tattoo for the people on YouTube and tell us what's the tattoo, man?
I've had it for a while. It's just my pilot wings. So I made a decision, I said, if you ever go to war, you have to get a tattoo. And so I got this. It'd been a while actually. Yeah, I didn't do it right away, but I think 2011 is when I got it. So there you go. I'm starting to get the old man fade a little bit, but it's still pretty sharp. So I may have to touch it up. The only difference is I'm supposed to have a wreath now around the star because, of how many years I've flown, but I don't have that. Probably won't get it. It'll look a little awkward, little new ink blended with the old one.
Well, you've also got a little one now. So like
Yeah, I do.
you didn't have a little one when you were in Congress. And I know for me, I mean, in a no shit kind of way, like I worry about my kids being around me. They don't come with me to CNN. They don't come with
Mhm.
like it's almost like I go into a mindset where being, especially in the national media now, is kind of putting a target on your back. But how's being a dad, man? I mean, we talked about it last time, but I do think it really grounds you in this kind of work, especially, right? So how is being a
Yeah.
and you come home off of TV and then you go and probably do bottles and bedtime, right?
Yeah, it's great. Look, he's 3 now, and he's like now, like yesterday, actually, it's funny because my wife went and did something. So I'm watching him during nap time. Of course, he didn't go to sleep because, why would he when the wife was gone? And so he's screaming. And I go in there to try to, help him. And he's just literally picking up his legs and kicking me as hard as he can. He didn't want dad, he wanted mom. And I am told that's going to last for a few more years. It's fine. But look, it's great, because first off, I have no clue, Paul, how anybody with a young kid can do Congress. I have no clue. And thank God I didn't have a young kid in Congress, because I don't know how you do it. Some people do. Good on them. I couldn't. And so, yeah, I'm a little older, a little more tired than I probably could have been, if I'd have done this 15, 20 years ago. But the reality is it's great. It reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing. It is, it's to torture this kind of combat tour thing. The question, and this is what constantly goes through my head now that I have a kid. If I was single and this is what I was doing, it's fine. But it's like, the guys that did 1 tour in Vietnam, we consider them heroic. Guys that did 2 tours, heroic. 3 tours, heroic. The rare person that did 4. How many tours is enough, right? How many tours when you can finally say, look, the country's not saved, but I'm done. And that's what I struggle with is like, for me, I never want to give up on it. And I'm not right now, let's be clear. But that's the thing you have to start going through your head on is like, it's not just me anymore. I now have a wife and kid with me. And, but I'll tell you, the thing I think that really actually fires me up more than anything is I refuse to be intimidated. Now, maybe that's dumb. And maybe in the long term, that's not smart, but I will not be intimidated, particularly by these people that pretend like they're tough guys. I mean, they really pretend. Look, you can't be an alpha male and sit here and put Donald Trump all over your X profile and talk about how amazing this fatso is, who really has never done a thing that's manly in his entire life, and then tell me that you're an alpha male with that. And that's where I'm sitting here looking, go, look, as men, and I'm kind of all over the place in this answer, but as men, we have to redefine masculinity to America's young men about what masculinity is. And unfortunately, they're not seeing the right example of that.
No, I think this is really a very, very important conversation. And we didn't get into it enough with Wes Moore last week, but he presented a part of his state budget and agenda and strategy with a focus on young men and boys. We've had Scott Galloway on this show talking about what is really a crisis for young men and boys, and especially in a political environment where they can be radicalized more easily, right? I mean, you and I know, serving in the Middle East, the most dangerous thing is a young, pissed off man with a gun. Right. Yep. And we're kind of building a generation of them in America. And Trump has captured a lot of them with this kind of faux next generation. It's like cosplay masculinity. It's a generation of people who are following Hegseth, but most of them didn't serve. And they played paintball and Call of Duty. And I think this reclaiming of masculinity and also portraying a positive example of what a male leader looks like, and especially white male leaders, right? So we can contrast for the rest of the country these guys who are almost all white and almost all male. I think it's a really, really important discussion, and I think it's a big part of why the Democrats lost. So
I do too.
Let me ask you to dig into that, because you talk about a lot of things. Your Substack is growing, which is really important. But there's a piece that everybody's missing, Adam, that I think you might be able to help me work through. I think the war deployments construct is a good one. But I think a better one may be the anti-war movement, because we're waiting for our John Kerry, our Bobby Mueller. It's not going to be Chuck Schumer. It's not going to be someone in Congress. It's going to be this new generation of I've said a new generation of Colonel Vindmans. Maybe it's somebody who's fired from the Pentagon or a former FBI agent. These new leaders are going to rise, and the country is starving for that, but they're also starving for a defense strategy. And it doesn't seem like anyone has articulated what we do. It's clear that Trump has a plan, Project 2025 and the rest of them, and they are rolling. They're invading the country. They are taking everything over. In your view, what is the strategy to stop them? Or who is putting forward a strategy that America can rally behind?
Who's putting forward a strategy? Nobody. Let's just be honest, nobody. And, look, the Democrats lost young men, huge. And I'll be critical to the Harris campaign. They spent their whole time going after women, right? Like, Liz Cheney's great, but, it's Harris and Liz Cheney up there. Like, sorry, you guys are winning women. You need to go after men. So they have a poor strategy to take this back. The Democrats sit there and it reminds me of, so I started running in 2009, shortly after Obama was elected. And I remember talking to these Republican leaders in the House saying, I'm going to run, and they were just beat down. They were saying, like, okay, come back. I don't know what's going to happen. That's what the Democrats are right now. They're shell shocked. They're beat down. There was an Onion article that says, House Democratic leaders standing really still, hoping nobody notices them. And I mean, that's really what it is. And so it's not going to be the Democratic Party. Now, that doesn't mean the Democratic Party isn't the alternative. It is in this environment. But they don't know how to do this. And so it's going to take folks like you, folks like me, disaffected Republicans, and people who haven't been in the system to come in and say, I'm willing to offend not just Republicans, but Democrats as well. Because this movement is not going to be, and I think we're going to see this year kind of a new Tea Party, honestly, but not necessarily based on ideology, but anti, and what's the issue? It's going to be anti the richest among us controlling us. Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, with the most powerful person in the world, thinking they know what's best for us. And we honestly know they don't care what's best for us. They care what's best for them. That's going to be what rises from here. It's going to start with pushing back at town halls. If your member's not having a town hall, demand they have a town hall. If they don't have a town hall, say they're hiding from you. It's going to be that kind of stuff until we get to an election in 2 years and then ultimately in 4 years. But look, I know it's frustrating to people because they want to do something right now. That's one thing you can do is demand that for your representative.
Yeah, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries says, I really don't know what to do. He said it out in the open, right? I'm trying to find the power is what he said. I mean, the Democratic strategy seemed to be elect Kamala Harris. That was the strategy, right? And then when they lost, they're shattered. And now you've even got James Carville, who I usually think is right, says the Democratic strategy should be play possum and do nothing. Which is like the most glaring example of how wrong this all is, in my view, because they are they're taking over everything, and they want you to say, you know what, go hide in the bathroom and let them take over the rest of the house, and then maybe they'll tire themselves out, and you can reemerge all of a sudden from the bathroom and remove them from the house. Right? But I think there's also a danger in what Trump is doing, which the parallel I look for is the de-Baathification after Saddam in Iraq, because the purged can be the opposition, right? There's all these senior leaders at the Pentagon, senior leaders at the FBI, really smart government servants who've been nonpartisan their whole life. So if a CQ Brown plants his flag tomorrow and says, hey guys, we are now the opposition, we are going to defend our democracy, defend our Constitution, I think people are starved for that right now. Outside of politics, do you see anybody? There are people like Mark Cuban, right? I mean, Richard Branson, there's the anti-billionaires, right? But is there anybody that you see that's not a politician? Because I really think that's important. I use CQ Brown as maybe an example. Milley, everybody wanted Milley to be more political, but he's kind of gone to ground. Is there anybody you see or you follow that you would trust to lead us forward on this?
I wish, man. I really wish. I can't think of it. Like I said, you mentioned Cuban. I think he's doing a good job. He's said he's not going to run. That's fine. He can be a thought leader in this process because, for somebody like him, he's got an ability to go on. I hate to talk about the Rogan thing, but he has the ability to go on Rogan, right,
Yep.
and do that. And that's what we're going to need a lot more of. Look, the military guys, like, I don't understand the silence from them. The Mattises, right? CQ's just out, so we'll see. Milley, etc. It's like they're fearful of something. And look, if you think that the current generals, man, I hope so. But if you think it's guaranteed that the current generals and civilian leadership in the Pentagon is going to disobey a bad order, that's a lot more faith than I have right now. I think it's much more likely that this purge that has happened of the JAGs, of CQ Brown, of everybody else is more about sending a message, which is this is Donald Trump's military and you will do what Donald Trump wants. And that's a worry to me. So no, look, outside of politics, I've not seen that person rise up. I'm not sure if they will outside of politics because people that aren't in politics are scared to death of getting involved in politics right now. When, as you and I are recording this, I mean, it was Jeff Bezos announced that he's going to limit the opinion page on the Washington Post to free market and whatever the hell else, liberty, which is exactly what Donald Trump wants. This obeying in advance is like, it's terrifying, but it should motivate us. It should motivate us to say, and this has been my message in the last week particularly, which is, guys, it's still our country. Like, this is still our country. So just because they have the power, it's not guaranteed forever. Let's take this country back.
I think if you polled Americans and said, give us 10 leaders who are a part of the opposition to the Trump agenda, I think your name would probably come up in the top 10. I think some of the other folks you mentioned would as well. And I want to go deeper on the Pentagon and Hegseth and Tulsi because we know them. You've worked alongside them or you've been around them. But this deepening, I called it the deepening and consolidating of the Trump propaganda machine, where the Pentagon is the example, right? Everything that Hegseth is doing, from banning books to pushing out the press to getting rid of trans people to redoing communication so he only talks to camera. Like, this is the proof of concept that they're going to cascade across the rest of the government. And what we're looking for is a counter narrative, right? And there doesn't seem to be anybody putting forward a counter narrative. But I got to come back to there's no Republican forming any kind of counter narrative. So every time you come on the show, I'm going to ask you, why the fuck are you still a Republican?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's important, and I don't know if I'm going to stay this forever.
That's what you tell me every time you come on.
Yeah, I know. But like the issue is this is if I all of a sudden say, look, I'm a Democrat now, then all of a sudden, what is your,
I'm not advocating for that.
Or independent, even so. It's being a Republican it sends two messages. Number one, I'm not the one that changed. And I mean, I think this is very clear. It's the party that changed. And the other thing, it really pisses them off that I still call myself a Republican, but it also gives me a credibility that, like, whether it's in media, on podcasts, or in writing, that I wouldn't have if I left the party. But that said, I mean, I'm telling you, it's not going to last like this forever. There's a moment at which I have to make that decision, but it hasn't come yet. Because right now,
a lot of you guys, I asked Michael Steele this question every time he comes on too, and it was like, well, we'll see if they nominate Trump. Well, they see if they elect Trump.
No, I've never said that.
No, but I'm saying others have said that, right? Others have said that. But at this point, that might also be bringing you down, right? They're trading on your name. You're kind of carrying the baggage of this fucked up brand, and even you saying you're a Republican gives the Republican Party some degree of legitimacy. So is there an opportunity? And I'm going to keep asking you and other for you, Liz Cheney, Michael Steele. Is it Republican 2.0? Is it Republican light? Is it new Republicans? Whatever the fuck you guys call it. But for those of you that sit where you are, and a lot of them were at the conference that you were part of, the First Principles Conference, what was it called? I'm sorry, remind me.
Principles First, yeah.
Principles First Conference, right? It was a lot of disaffected Republicans, moderate Republicans, a lot of the bulwark people, but there doesn't seem to be an organization of them, right? They're all doing their TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is an organization, Principles First part of it. I have Country First. There's all these different organizations. I mean, the idea that you're going to get a bunch of strong personalities together and say, you guys all need to row in the exact same direction and unite behind one person, it's never happened in history, and it's difficult to happen. Usually that unifying figure has to rise out of that. But back on the Republican thing, first off, they're negative trading on my name more than anything, probably. But secondly, my 12 years in Congress was as a Republican. So, when I talk about my time in Congress or the job, I was a Republican in doing that. So, but look, I also think, again, it's if you stand back and you try to put out a blueprint and author, like, here's how the opposition is going to come out and win, it never happens like that. It always is organic. The big key, though, and this is important, it's a good lesson you learned from Venezuela, for instance, is the opposition can't fight among itself. Because when it fights among itself, it will never win again. And that's going to be the key. And so that's where it's awkward, is you're putting Republicans or former Republicans like me with independents like you, with Democrats, and saying, you guys have to get along and not fight among yourself. So far, it's been okay, but that's what's got to hold, I think.
But we've also got to win elections. And that's part of the problem here, is that I keep saying the Democrats are not going to save you. You can't count on the Republicans anymore. They continue to go deeper. We ran 11 candidates this past year. We're going to run at least 25 for IVA this year. Dan Osborne, I keep saying, what a great example he was. Yeah, he lost by 6 points. But if he won, he's the no vote on Hegseth. He's the no vote on all of this. And, $70 million or so in the Dan Osborne campaign. He was not the best, but he was the best we had, right? And I wonder if we're like one or two people away, right? One or two Democrats or Republicans just breaking away, and probably someone who's in a district where a Democrat can't win. And it could be a Mark Cuban or someone else. This is fucking, I'm running for governor of Texas. I'm running for a high profile race, and then others will follow. So I just want to encourage you to keep in mind, they're waiting for you, right? I think they're waiting for you and other people to break, because I do think we're close to a dam breaking. And it doesn't have to be any party affiliation. It can just be a united group of people who are against Trump. When we were in Iraq, I remember one of my translators said to me, we were never united at all except against Saddam. And then we were totally ununited until you got here. Now we're united against you. But we are all united against Trump, and that might be enough, right?
It might be. And here's the thing that we have to break, though, and you're as well aware of this as anything. We've been programmed to believe every issue has two sides, and we've been programmed to believe that to be a member of a party, you have to have an opinion that agrees on all the issues. That's actually a relatively new phenomenon, that like the GOP agrees on issues and the Democrats agree on issues. Used to be there were all kinds of debates in the party. And secondly, take the issue of abortion. There is not two sides to abortion. There's about 100 different sides to abortion. And the problem is, if you have an independent candidate running and they say, okay, independent, that's great, you're centrist, what's your opinion on abortion? Well, I'm generally pro-life. And then all the pro-choicers go, oh my God, I cannot vote for anybody that's pro-life. And then, or if it's a pro-choicer, all the pro-lifers, oh my God, I could never vote for somebody that's pro-choice. And we retreat to our corners. That's the mindset we have to break.
Yeah.
And we may be getting to that point, but
I think we are, because let's use it as an example, right? You might not love Dan Osborne, but he wasn't going to vote for Hegseth. He's not going to overturn abortion rights. He's not going to vote yes for Tulsi Gabbard. He's not going to vote yes for Kash Patel. And I think especially Democrats and moderates are giving up on the Democratic purity test, right? And the practical reality of what we're facing is so much bigger than that. I keep coming back to what I think Wes mentioned in our last episode. People are looking for leaders. And if they trust an authentic, no shit, truly patriotic leader, they'll follow you, even if they don't love your abortion position or your gun position, right? And I think we're going to keep being really hungry for those people until somebody plants a flag and says, I'm going to use first and follow me.
Let me use an example I use, because we're military guys, and I use this a lot, and it makes sense of this. So if we're all in a trench, right? We're in a trench in Ukraine, and we have an enemy that's 5 meters away and 25 meters away. And you probably would tell all your men too, everybody focus everything on the 5 meter target. Ignore the 25 meter target. 5 meter. The 5 meter target right now is the threat to democracy. That is what we all have to focus on. The 25 meter target is the convenient target that we can focus on if we take care of the 5 meter guy. The 25 meter target is we disagree on whatever the friggin' issues are. That, by the way, is called democracy. And that means we've saved democracy if we're agreeing again. All our fire has to be focused on that 5 meter target. Now, the question, though, is like, how does somebody, quote unquote, rise up to lead a movement? And keep in mind, that's something I debate myself all the time. Like, okay, do I want to help lead something like this? And what does that look like? You don't just declare yourself the leader of something. How do you do that? And that's where I think over the next few months, maybe even the next year, that comes to place, as long as we're thinking consciously about it and we wait for the right moments to strike.
So let's focus on what I think is the 5 meter target. And I think Trump made the lead element, which is Hegseth and the Department of Defense. He knew if he could get Hegseth through, everything would be easy. If you seize the power at the Pentagon, everything else is easy. And I don't think, especially Democrats, fully appreciate how he made Hegseth the tip of the spear to control the Pentagon. Now he's going to make the Pentagon the tip of the spear for his entire cultural agenda, right? And the model on everything from how they privatize to how they hire to the messaging, even just to the meanness. But I'm watching, and I've covered this a lot, how Doug Collins at VA is now a mirror image of Hegseth. It's just, and then it will be FBI, and then education, transportation, all that shit will be easy. But can you talk about, from your view, Hegseth in particular, because he is the leader of this freight train, and we need leaders who can kind of go in the UFC octagon against him. And you're one of them. We've seen Ambassador Bolton. You've seen I don't know who else. Like, I'm pressed here, right, to find other people who are standing opposite Hegseth. But there's an example of where a 5 meter target is pushing down on us. And what is your latest take on how to slow him down and how to
Yeah.
on that juggernaut that's now picking up steam, it seems, at the Pentagon, rolling into Ukraine and rolling all around the globe.
Here's the thing that's really tough about the Pentagon when you think of it is, and we always know that no matter how bad things get, I knew sitting on the in the House at January 6th that if shit really hit the fan, at least the military would come in. That's always the break in case of emergency backstop. When you take that backstop away, there is nothing, right? You always knew, okay, if a president disobeyed the Supreme Court, there's escalating things, and eventually maybe the military removes him. If the military isn't there anymore, it creates a real fear. So what's the answer? I mean, look, here's where I think the key is going to be. The courts still work for now, and it is such a close majority in the House and really in the Senate too, that there's important leverage points, and we have to think creatively. So, you take somebody like Don Bacon and Brian Fitzpatrick, who I think are about to jump out of their skin, right? Yep. They've got to be pressured and encouraged to say, this may be your last term in office. And as a guy that had a last term in office, let me tell you, it's a blessing to be done with Congress. You don't know it at the time until you actually take that leap. But we've got to pressure them to say, okay, it's time to break ranks. Literally, it's one thing to say, I don't want to impeach Trump, which I think was wrong to not vote to impeach Trump, but regardless. But now your country is riding on the line. And I think there are leverage points in some of those that they can come out now, Don Bacon, for instance, and say, I'm voting against everything that the Speaker of the House wants until we fix this problem. And if they never fix this problem, I'll never vote for anything. And by the way, the legislative agenda, which is already going to be stalled, would be stalled even more. So is there much you can do in terms of you can't take a position in the Pentagon illegally, but what you can do is create this pressure outside politically on the folks that can. And that's our best bet right now until 2 years from now and then until 4 years from now.
Bacon's a good example. The other thing I've been encouraging the Democrats to do is to find legislative ways to tie him up. If Joe Biden had run for a second term, been reelected, the first thing the Republicans would have done is dropped articles of impeachment.
Totally.
Right? And now the Democrats, don't want to play the same way the Republicans do. There's also, you were in Congress when Senator Coburn was there. They used to call him Dr. No. He would put an anonymous hold on everything, right? Just to slow it. He held the Clay Hunt suicide bill. He held the 9/11 bill. There's nobody in the Democratic side that's willing to be the Dr. No. And in contrast, half of them voted for a radical like Doug Collins to be VA secretary. So is there anybody in the Democratic Senate that you think, or the Republican Senate, that you think is a focal point that people should put their pressure on? There's a Mitch McConnell voted no on Hegseth, right? Cassidy and others have been on the fence. Is there someone or some group of people in particular in the Senate that you think people listening should focus on to move?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the usual suspects. It's Bill Cassidy. It's Todd Young. Huge disappointments to me, by the way, both of them. Huge disappointments. Especially Bill Cassidy, who voted to remove Donald Trump. I considered him a personal friend and a hero. He's no hero because he wasn't in an election year. The time you put him in an election year, he's unwilling to take tough votes. So the 10 of us that voted to impeach were much more courageous than Cassidy because he knew, I have 4 years of my term left. F him. So him, Todd Young, Murkowski, Collins, those people. Tom Tillis, I don't even understand. He always plays this game like he's some friggin' moderate, and he's the reason Kash Patel got through. He forced him through, basically. So, but those are the key. The senators who either you don't hear much from because they're trying to stay low key, or who you do know better. That's where you put enough pressure on them. Keep in mind, when all this Tea Party stuff started in 2009, it was because the Democrats were doing healthcare. Chuck Grassley was supporting the healthcare bill, and then went to a town hall meeting, was confronted at the town hall meeting, and changed his position at that town hall meeting. That sparked the Tea Party. So forcing these people to do town hall meetings, confronting them there as a member of Congress that was confronted, by the way, in those, it is the most uncomfortable and terrible thing you have to go through, and actually does make a difference.
Is Ukraine the place to create that cleavage? Because the thing that people haven't been talking enough about is all this disruption, all these leadership purges are making us more vulnerable to attack, right?
Yeah,
And I think we put
completely.
that line on. Now we put the whole world against us. We look like the bad guys. But is Lindsey Graham, who's been right on Ukraine? They're unlikely people. Democrats don't want to say anything nice about Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham, but this is a political war, and you got to get any ally you can. So is Lindsey Graham and Bacon and people like that on Ukraine the spot where the break starts to happen?
I think so. I think Ukraine is the issue, because if you see, even in the last few weeks, you know, Mark Levin, some of these kind of right-wing media, you even see it occasionally on, you know, state media, Fox News. They occasionally will be like, I don't understand what's happening, or they'll ask the Republicans, well, don't you I mean, do you really think Russia's not the invader here? And by the way, every time you ask somebody if Russia invaded Ukraine and they don't answer the question, they look like friggin' idiots. And so I think Ukraine is that leverage point. We'll see what Donald Trump ends up doing. But I don't think he's going to end up doing anything on behalf of Ukraine. And let's keep in mind, Russia has lost, it's worth remembering, 800,000 people to occupy 20% of Ukraine. We lost half of that in World War II and liberated a continent and took down an empire. Russia's not winning this war. And as anybody that knows anything about military tactics, the only thing a defending country has to do to win a war is defend. That's it. Defend long enough to wear out the enemy. That's exactly what's happening. Ukraine is winning, and Trump is about to throw them a lifeline. About to throw Russia a lifeline.
I know we got to let you go. I don't know if you have a couple minutes to stick around for Patreon members for some extra content. You're doing the content production now, so you know how important those folks are. If you're not watching on YouTube, please check us out on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. Let me ask you this final question, Adam, which I think is the one that you just teed up. You said, you know, defending is victory, right? And is that not what we have to do now? Do we have to not defend against Trump, just like the Ukrainians, and endure these attacks? I call it a great cultural, political, artistic, cultural depression, right? We're going through it, and we got to hang in there, and we got to get through it. So for the people who are feeling like they need a leader and are looking to you, the people who are in the trenches, who are sacrificing their butter and their beans and their freedoms, and they're worried about being deported or having their rights taken away, can you talk directly to them? Because they hear from leaders about, you know, how they can get through this and how they should get through this.
Listen, Paul and I, and some of you know people that, for instance, were parliamentarians in countries where parliamentarians regularly get assassinated, right? We always read the stories about heroes in history that, you know, either hid the Jews in World War II or did whatever. All these heroic stories. The reason they're stories and the reason they're heroic is because they're not easy. And we are now living in that time where things are going to be required of us that we will write stories and folklore about. That's this moment. Now, again, not everybody's capable and equipped for it. That's why people's names are in these stories, because there's so few of them. But this is our moment. This is the moment where you, honest to God, will look back in 5 years, no matter what happens in this country. You'll be proud of the fact that you stayed in the fight. And you'll also be proud to tell your kids or your grandkids you stayed in the fight. Now, maybe that's just tweeting on occasion. Maybe that's just keeping hope, right? Maybe you don't have a platform where you're doing a podcast or you're a former politician. That's okay. You do the best you can with what you have. Because the other thing I'll tell you is take the burden off your own shoulders. We all carry around this burden like it's all on us. It's not, right? We're a part of a team that's going to fight back. When you carry that burden, you eventually get worn out and you quit. Don't get worn out and quit. The other side loves the chaos. They feed on this. They're energized by this every day. You and I get exhausted by it. So do everything you can to keep from getting exhausted and stay in this fight, because if you back out, more people will, and then we'll lose. And you'll look back, truly, no hard work ever seems hard in the rearview mirror, right? I think back to Iraq and I'm like, oh, that was great. Yeah, it was pretty hard. You'll look back and be ashamed if you fell out of this. And so we need you. Stay in.
Thank you for that. Thank you for carrying the flag forward, for representing a positive image of American leadership for the world and for our kids. Thank you for showing your tattoo and juggling a little guy in the midst of all this. Folks, definitely follow Adam's Substack. Support everything he does. Check out his organization. Encourage him to declare his independence like so many of us have. We're waiting for you, man. But until then, you're going to stick around for a couple quick fire questions. Thank you for all you do. And until next time, my friends, stay vigilant. right, if you haven't already, please watch this episode on YouTube. Subscribe there. And if you haven't gone to independentamericans.us, please go there now. You can watch this show, you can listen to this show, you can share it with your friends, and you can check out recent episodes if you missed them with Maryland Governor Wes Moore, Senator and former Governor Bob Kerrey, Asha Rangappa, FBI expert, and many others. You can even go all the way back and check out Henry Rollins, Peter Berg, Sarah Jessica Parker, Senator John Tester, and many, many more, including Stephen Colbert, Milo Ventimiglia, John Bernthal, and others. Go back in the archives. If you're new, welcome. Check it out. We've got video on all of them on our YouTube page, and I encourage you to check them out and share them. And before we go, a couple of Rykoff's recommendations to help you get through these final days of February and surge like a lion into March. My biggest recommendation is one I've made before, but I'm going to tweak a little bit. My recommendation is to check out local college basketball, small college basketball. Last night, I went to check out Baruch College take on Brooklyn College in a Division III semifinal matchup here in New York City. It was Division III basketball, tough, gritty, heart basketball in a small gym with no cost on the tickets and a really, really great game that was a nail-biter that went down to the final seconds. The Bearcats defeated Brooklyn College and will go on to the finals of the CUNYAC Championship on Friday night, thanks in part to their fearless captain and Steady Buckets coach, number 12, Dylan Minnick, who started in the Steady Buckets nonprofit basketball program himself as an 8-year-old. Now, he's a captain on this team, but even more importantly, he is a coach to young boys and girls all across the city, hundreds of which came out to cheer him on last night to victory. But here's why I'm recommending it. Small, local college and high school basketball, men's and women's, is really the best of what community basketball and leadership is all about. Young leaders and mentors, like Dylan Minnick, show that America is often still a place of selflessness, honor, and heart. And there is nothing like basketball in March. So good luck to the Baruch Bearcats and all the other teams out there that are giving it their heart and, most importantly, inspiring the next generation. On to the finals, and enjoy the madness. I can't only stick to basketball because baseball is here. It's a sign of hope. Pitchers and catchers have reported spring training games are underway, and there's no shortage of tradition being unraveled. Sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. And this time it involves the New York Yankees. The famous or infamous Yankee grooming standard is no more. Here's the statement from Yankees general manager and partner Hal Steinbrenner. Maybe it was long overdue, but it was also one rule that made the Yankees just a little bit different. It required a unique sacrifice and level of discipline to be a Yankee. It was part of the deal. Just like in the military, which has also, by the way, relaxed a lot of its grooming standards over the last few years. The boss, George Steinbrenner, must be rolling over in his grave, but my favorite player as a child, Donnie Baseball, Don Mattingly, is surely smiling. I just hope that maybe it brings us some luck this year. But also a reminder that things are changing, and not every kind of change is bad, as long as you keep that level of respect and discipline. And I hope that the Yankees can do that and finally bring us back another World Series championship. So my recommendation, we've got to evolve or die, even if you're the New York Yankees, and enjoy the baseball. Our phone number, if you don't know it, is out there, 317-721-1718. Please give us a call, leave us a message, tell me what you think of this show. We've been getting some great messages lately, including this one.
Hi, Paul. My name's Carrie Pay, and I just listened to the podcast with former Senator Bob Kerrey, and I am on fire. That was one of the best, it was cathartic listening to the two of you guys speak, and I'm a huge admirer of his. I actually worked on his campaign while in New York City when he was running for president, and funny enough, his big financial sponsor in New York City was a scumbag that was named Wilbur Ross. That's another story. But anyway, thank you so much for your podcast. I love seeing you on TV. I love listening to your podcast. And you keep doing what you're doing because we need you, man. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for calling. Please keep them coming. We appreciate you. Follow us on social media. Join our Patreon crew where you will get behind the scenes content. You will get a heads up on our guests. If you're a Patreon member, you're going to get an extra piece of content with Adam Kinzinger right after this episode in your Patreon box. So check that out. You also get episodes with no commercials. So spread the word and help us keep this movement going. The future is full of independence, folks. We're growing in number by the day as more and more Americans say no to the Democratic and the Republican Party. Because independents are the future. George Washington was our first and unfortunately our last independent president. And he put patriotism above any party. And that's what we need more of right now. And we're not alone in our independence. America might be more divided than ever before, but we here at Independent Americans, at Righteous Media, and across the independent movement are working hard to find ways to bring independence and all Americans together, to contrast all that heat with a little bit of light. So if you're among the 50% of Americans who call yourselves independent, this is your show. Even if you're a Republican or a Democrat and you're just a little bit independent curious, this is your show. All are welcome here. Unlike the Pentagon press briefing room, all are welcome here. Because our independent movement is the hope for the future and a source of patriotism in these critical and often dark times. Country over party, people over politics, light over heat, busting up the status quo and building brick by brick a new movement that can help move our country forward together independently. As always, if you're an independent veteran, check out independentveteransofamerica.org. We are recruiting candidates now to run in 2025 and 2026. We've had over 150 veterans contact us and tell us they are interested in running. So continue to spread the word. Donate, share, and do what you can to help us bring more independent leadership to America, not just in Washington, but at the local level as well. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Adam Kinzinger. If you did, please share it far and wide and invite others to declare their independence now. And stay vigilant, my friends, because eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And it's a price we have to pay now more than ever. And hope is still the oxygen of democracy, and it will help you stay vigilant. And no, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant, and we're all in this together. I'm your host, Paul Rykov. Thank you for watching and listening. Down with Putin. Down with Hamas. Slava Ukraine. Happy birthday, River! Stay vigilant, America. And go Baruch! Go Baruch! Stay vigilant, folks.
Powered by Righteous Media.